Part 1. The Discovery. In a bustling city, Emily was a dedicated detective known for her sharp instincts and keen observation skills. One rainy evening, she received a mysterious tip-off about a string of infidelities linked to a prominent businessman, Mr. Thompson. The informant, a nervous woman named Clara, claimed to have seen Mr. Thompson meeting various women in secret locations. Intrigued, Emily decided to investigate further. Emily began her surveillance the next day. She watched as Mr. Thompson left his lavish office heading toward a luxurious hotel. It was a familiar pattern. She had observed this behavior before. As she followed him inside, her heart raced with anticipation. What secrets lay behind those closed doors? Once inside, Emily positioned herself discreetly in the hotel lobby, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, she spotted Clara, the informant, entering the hotel looking panicked. Emily's instincts kicked in. She quickly approached Clara, who was visibly shaken. "What's going on?" Emily asked, her voice calm but urgent. Part 2. The Unexpected Twist. Clara hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to leap out at her. "I saw something I shouldn't have," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "Mr. Thompson isn't just cheating on his wife. He's involved in something much darker." Emily's curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "Last week I saw him with a group of men. They were talking about some illegal business deals, and I overheard plans for a big transaction." Clara's voice trembled. "I didn't think much of it until I saw him with another woman last night." She looked terrified. Intrigued yet alarmed, Emily sensed this investigation was spiraling into deeper waters than she initially anticipated. "We need to find out more. Can you take me to where you saw them?" Clara nodded hesitantly, leading Emily to a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of town. As they approached, they noticed shadows moving inside. Emily's heart raced. They had to be cautious. Part 3. The Hidden Agenda. They crept closer, careful not to be seen. Through a cracked window, they peered inside to see Mr. Thompson surrounded by several men in dark suits, discussing plans in hushed tones. "The shipment must go smoothly. We can't afford any mistakes," one man said, his voice low but commanding. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a case of infidelity. They were involved in something illegal and potentially dangerous. Just then, Clara gasped. "That's the woman I saw him with," she whispered, pointing to a frightened young woman seated at a table, her hands trembling. Suddenly the door creaked open, and a burly man stepped out. "What are you doing here?" he growled, spotting Emily and Clara. They quickly ducked behind a nearby car, adrenaline pumping. "Think fast," Emily whispered, pulling out her phone to alert her team while Clara looked ready to bolt. They had to act quickly before they were caught. Part 4. The Showdown. Emily's team arrived just in time, bursting into the warehouse. A chaotic scene ensued as the men in suits scrambled to flee. Emily spotted Mr. Thompson trying to escape through a back exit. She chased after him, determined to confront him. "Mr. Thompson?" she called, her voice echoing in the dark alley. He turned, a mixture of anger and panic flashing across his face. "You don't understand what you're getting into," he shouted, his eyes wild. "I know enough," Emily replied, standing her ground. "You're involved in something illegal, and it's only a matter of time before the truth comes out." In a moment of desperation, he lunged at her, but Emily was ready. With swift reflexes, she sidestepped him and pulled out her badge. "You're under arrest." As she cuffed him, a glimmer of fear crossed his face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. There are people who will do anything to protect their interests." Part 5. The Revelation. As Emily escorted him back to the car, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye. Back at the precinct, as they processed Mr. Thompson, he suddenly laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Emily's spine. "You think this is over? You have no idea about the real players in this game." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from the precinct entrance. The lights flickered as a group of armed men burst through the door, taking everyone by surprise. "Release Thompson," one of them shouted, their weapons drawn. Emily quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about a dangerous network that spanned far beyond her initial investigation. Part 6. The Unforeseen Ending. As chaos erupted, Emily realized she had to act fast. "Clara, we need to get everyone to safety," she yelled, grabbing her partner's arm. They managed to guide a few officers to safety while trying to devise a plan to protect Mr. Thompson and themselves. Why would they care so much about him? Clara asked, breathing heavily. Emily narrowed her eyes, her mind racing. Because he knows something that could take down their entire operation. In a bold move, she decided to use Mr. Thompson as bait, knowing his life was in danger but convinced it was the only way to expose the truth. "We'll protect you, but you need to cooperate," she said firmly. Just as the armed men cornered them, Emily shouted, "You think you can intimidate us? You're all going down." With that, she triggered the alarm system, sending a warning to all nearby units. As sirens blared in the distance, the armed men hesitated, glancing at each other in fear. "We can't let this happen," one of them muttered. In that moment of hesitation, Emily and her team seized the opportunity, rushing to apprehend the attackers while ensuring Mr. Thompson's safety. When the dust settled, they stood victorious, knowing they had uncovered a web of deceit that extended beyond anything they could have imagined. With Mr. Thompson in custody, Emily knew this was just the beginning. The real investigation was about to unfold, revealing secrets that could change the course of many lives forever. Part 7. A Shocking Truth. In the aftermath of the raid, Emily sat down with Mr. Thompson in an interrogation room. He was visibly shaken, his bravado stripped away. "I never thought it would come to this," he said, his voice trembling. "I was just trying to keep my life under control." Emily leaned in, intrigued. "You said there's more to this than infidelity. What else are you hiding?" He hesitated, glancing down at the table. "It's not just me. My wife, Jessica, she's been seeing someone too. I found out a few weeks ago, but I didn't want to believe it. I thought if I kept my head down, things would settle." Emily raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "Who is she seeing? Does it relate to the illegal dealings?" "Yes," Mr. Thompson confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's involved with one of my business rivals, a man named Frank. They're planning to take me down together. That's why I was so desperate to keep my affairs hidden. I didn't want her to leverage my indiscretions against me." Emily felt the weight of his words. This was a tangled web where both parties had secrets that could destroy their lives. "We need to get in touch with Jessica and Frank," she said firmly. "If we can catch them in the act, we might uncover their plan." Part 8. The Confrontation. With her team's support, Emily arranged a surveillance operation to monitor Jessica. They set up cameras and listening devices in strategic locations around her home and the locations she frequented. As they worked, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She had encountered many unfaithful spouses in her career, but this felt different. The following evening, they watched as Jessica left her house and headed to a local cafe. Emily and Clara followed discreetly, their hearts racing as they prepared for a confrontation. They settled at a nearby table, pretending to be engrossed in their own conversation, while keeping a close eye on Jessica. Within moments, Frank arrived, his demeanor confident as he approached Jessica. They exchanged hushed greetings before slipping into a booth in the back corner. Emily leaned in, straining to hear their conversation. "Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" Frank asked, his voice low. Jessica laughed softly. "He's too busy with his own affairs. He'll never see it coming." Emily's stomach churned. It was clear that Jessica had manipulated the situation, playing both sides to her advantage. Part 9. The Revelation. As the conversation unfolded, Emily and Clara exchanged glances, each realizing the gravity of what they were witnessing. Frank leaned closer, and Emily caught snippets of their plot to bring down Mr. Thompson by using his infidelity against him. "This is the perfect distraction," Frank said, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "While he's distracted by your cheating, we'll make our move on his business. It'll be a clean cut." Emily signaled to her team, preparing to move in. Just as they were about to confront the couple, Jessica suddenly looked around, her instincts kicking in. "I think we're being watched," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. At that moment, Emily and Clara stood up, revealing themselves. "Jessica Thompson, you're under investigation for conspiracy and infidelity," Emily announced, her voice steady. Jessica's face paled as she realized the situation. "You can't do this," she cried, desperation evident in her tone. "Actually, we can," Clara added, stepping forward. "It's time for the truth to come out." Part 10, The Showdown. As they apprehended Jessica and Frank, Emily felt a surge of triumph. This case had spiraled far beyond a simple infidelity investigation, exposing a dangerous alliance that threatened both lives and businesses. Back at the precinct, as Emily reviewed the evidence, she received a surprising phone call from Mr. Thompson. "I need to speak with you," he said urgently. "It's about Jessica and Frank." Emily agreed to meet him at a nearby diner. When she arrived, Mr. Thompson was already waiting, a pained expression on his face. "I never wanted it to come to this," he admitted, his voice laced with regret. "But I can't let them destroy everything I've built. I have to fight back." Emily listened carefully. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to turn the tables on them," he said, a new resolve shining in his eyes. "If we can gather enough evidence against them, I can not only save my business but expose their corrupt dealings as well." As they strategized, Emily realized that this unexpected alliance could be their best chance to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy. "We'll need to set up a sting operation," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. Part 11, The Sting Operation. Emily and Mr. Thompson planned the operation meticulously. They set a trap, luring Jessica and Frank into believing they had a new business deal to discuss, one that involved a significant payout. The meeting was set at an abandoned warehouse where they could record everything. On the day of the operation, Emily, Clara, and a team of officers hid nearby, waiting for the right moment to intervene. As Jessica and Frank arrived, the tension was palpable. They were confident, oblivious to the fact that they were walking into a trap. "Do you have the documents?" Frank asked, a smirk on his face as they entered the warehouse. Jessica nodded, her excitement evident. This will finally put an end to Thompson. Emily watched from her hidden position, ready to spring into action. She had never been more certain of her instincts. Part 12, The Final Twist. Just as Jessica was about to hand over the documents to Frank, Emily and her team burst into the room. "You're both under arrest," Emily shouted, catching them off guard. In the chaos that followed, Jessica tried to flee, but Clara was quicker, intercepting her before she could escape. "It's over, Jessica. You can't run from the truth," Clara declared, holding her firmly. As the officers apprehended both Jessica and Frank, Emily took a moment to catch her breath. They had succeeded in uncovering the conspiracy, but it was also a bittersweet victory. Emily glanced at Mr. Thompson, who looked both relieved and heartbroken. "I never wanted it to end this way," he said softly, staring at the ground. "But I guess I can't pretend anymore." Emily nodded, understanding the complexity of human emotions intertwined in betrayal. "You have a chance to rebuild, to learn from this." In the end, the case brought to light not just a web of infidelity and conspiracy, but also the personal costs of deceit. As Emily left the precinct that night, she couldn't help but reflect on the tangled lives they had uncovered, knowing that trust, once broken, was a fragile thing. And as she drove home, she felt a sense of closure wash over her, knowing that sometimes the hardest truths were the ones that set you free. Part 13, The Aftermath. In the weeks following the arrests, Emily found herself inundated with media attention. The story of Mr. Thompson's betrayal and the conspiracy involving Jessica and Frank had captivated the public. Headlines blared about the shocking scandal, and Emily's name was on everyone's lips. Despite the whirlwind of fame, Emily remained focused on her job. She understood that while the case had brought closure to some, the emotional fallout was far from over. Mr. Thompson, in particular, was struggling to navigate his new reality. He reached out to Emily, seeking advice on how to handle the media and the fallout from his wife's actions. One afternoon, they met for coffee. "I feel like my whole life has been turned upside down," he confessed, staring into his cup. I thought I could manage everything, but now I just feel lost. Emily offered him a sympathetic smile. It's okay to feel that way. Betrayal can shake you to your core. The important thing is to take it one step at a time. Mr. Thompson nodded, grateful for her understanding. I've been thinking about my priorities. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to reassess everything, my business, my relationships, everything. Emily could see a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's the first step. Embracing change can lead to growth. Part 14. A hidden agenda. Meanwhile, Clara had taken a deeper interest in the case. She began digging into Jessica and Frank's background, determined to uncover any additional links to criminal activities. What started as a personal vendetta against Jessica's betrayal had evolved into a genuine quest for justice. One evening, Clara called Emily, excitement lacing her voice. I found something. There's a pattern to Frank's business dealings. It looks like he's been involved in other illegal activities, including money laundering. Emily's heart raced. This could open up a whole new investigation. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. I'm looking at emails and transactions right now. If we can connect the dots, we might be able to take down a larger operation. Keep me updated. This could be big, Emily replied, her mind racing with possibilities. Part 15. The new investigation. Clara worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and tracking down leads. As she delved deeper, she unearthed a network of shady dealings involving multiple players connected to Frank. It wasn't just about Mr. Thompson anymore. This was a far-reaching criminal organization that had evaded law enforcement for years. One evening, Clara invited Emily to her apartment to present her findings. Spread across the table were documents, photos, and a timeline of events. Look at this. Clara pointed at a series of financial transactions. Frank isn't working alone. He's part of a syndicate that's been using businesses as fronts for their operations. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline. This could change everything. We need to approach our superiors with this information. Part 16. The call to action. The next day, they presented their findings to their captain, who was taken aback by the extent of the operation. This is serious, he said, reviewing the evidence. We need to take this to the task force. We can't handle this alone. With the captain's support, they launched a full investigation into Frank's syndicate. Emily and Clara coordinated with local law enforcement, gathering intel and setting up surveillance on suspected members of the organization. The stakes had risen significantly, and Emily knew they were on the verge of something monumental. As they monitored the situation, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows seemed to lurk around every corner, and she began to suspect that Frank had caught wind of their investigation. Part 17. The Threat. Late one night, as Emily returned home, she noticed a black car parked across the street. The driver's face was obscured, but she felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if someone was tracking her movements. She quickly texted Clara, urging her to be careful and remain alert. I think we might have a problem, she typed. Stay vigilant. Clara responded immediately, expressing her concerns. I'll be extra cautious. We can't let them know we're onto them. The tension between them escalated, both women feeling the weight of the dangers they were facing. But they were determined to see this investigation through, no matter the risks. Part 18. The Ambush. A few days later, as they closed in on Frank and his associates, Emily and Clara set up a sting operation to catch them in the act of a transaction. They had arranged a meeting at a secluded location, hoping to capture enough evidence to take down the entire organization. As they waited in their unmarked car, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. This is it, Clara whispered, her eyes glued to the entrance of the warehouse where the meeting was set to occur. Suddenly, they noticed several suspicious figures approaching. Frank was among them, flanked by a group of tough-looking men. Emily's heart raced. They had to be careful not to blow their cover. As Frank began to speak, Emily and Clara activated their recording devices, capturing every word. Just then, the black car from earlier appeared, driving toward them with alarming speed. Emily's instincts kicked in, and she quickly signaled to Clara, "We need to get out of here." Part 19. The Chase. They barely managed to escape the car as the black sedan came to a screeching halt and men poured out, guns drawn. "Get them!" one of the men shouted, and chaos erupted. Emily and Clara sprinted towards the nearby alley, adrenaline pumping through their veins. They could hear footsteps pounding behind them, but they refused to look back. They ducked into a narrow passage, breathing heavily, desperately searching for a way to evade their pursuers. "Where do we go?" Clara panted, her eyes wide with fear. "There." Emily pointed to a door leading into an abandoned building. They bolted inside, hoping to find a way to hide. Part 20. The Ultimate Betrayal. Inside the building, they found a dusty room filled with old crates and debris. They crouched behind a large crate, listening intently as the footsteps approached. "Did you see where they went?" One of the men shouted angrily. "They must be in here somewhere." Another replied. As they held their breath, Emily's mind raced. She had to find a way to turn this situation around. "We need to call for backup," she whispered urgently to Clara. But just as Clara was about to pull out her phone, the door swung open, and to their shock, Mr. Thompson stood there, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" Emily exclaimed, both relieved and confused. "I came to help," he said, glancing nervously at the men searching for them. "But I think we might have a problem." "Are you working with them?" Clara accused, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "No, I swear. I heard about the operation and wanted to make things right. But I think they've been watching me too. We need to get out of here now." Part 21. The Shootout. Just as they prepared to leave, the thugs burst into the room, guns drawn. "There they are," one of them shouted, and chaos erupted again. Emily, Clara, and Mr. Thompson dashed for the nearest exit, the sound of gunfire ringing in their ears. They narrowly escaped through a back door, sprinting into the night as the thugs pursued them. They raced down the street, seeking refuge in the nearest building they could find, an old run-down bar. The owner, an elderly man with a grizzled face, looked surprised but quickly recognized the urgency in their eyes. "Get in, quickly," he yelled, ushering them inside. Part 22. The Plan. Inside the bar, they huddled together, trying to catch their breath. "What do we do now?" Clara asked, her voice shaky. Emily looked at Mr. Thompson. "We can't let them win. We need to turn the tables on them, but we have to be smart about it." "I know the layout of their operation," Mr. Thompson said, determination flooding his voice. "If we can set a trap, we might be able to catch them off guard." Emily nodded, formulating a plan. "Let's gather all the evidence Clara has collected. If we can create a diversion, we can alert the task force while catching Frank and his men in the act." Part 23. The Confrontation. With renewed resolve, they spent the next few hours preparing for the final showdown. Emily coordinated with the task force, ensuring they were ready to move in as soon as the trap was set. The next evening, they executed their plan, luring Frank and his men to the same warehouse where they had initially set up the sting operation. They set up hidden cameras and microphones, making sure everything was in place. As the hours ticked by, tension filled the air. "Are you ready?" Emily asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "Let's do this," Clara replied, steeling herself for the confrontation. As Frank and his associates arrived, Emily and her team remained hidden, watching through the monitors. When the time was right, they sprang into action, storming the warehouse. "Freeze! You're all under arrest," Emily shouted, her voice echoing through the space. Part 24. The Reckoning. The surprise attack caught Frank and his men off guard, and a scuffle ensued. Officers quickly apprehended the criminals, and the chaos unfolded in a whirlwind of shouts and movements. Frank struggled against the officers, but his efforts were futile as they handcuffed him and the other men. Emily stood back, heart racing, as she watched the operation come to fruition. "Frank, you thought you could outsmart us?" she called out, feeling a surge of triumph. He shot her a venomous glare. "You have no idea what you're getting into. This isn't over." As the last of the thugs were led away, Emily turned to Clara and Mr. Thompson, relief flooding through her. "We did it. We finally took them down." But as they celebrated, a sense of unease lingered. Frank's ominous words echoed in Emily's mind. She knew that while they had won this battle, the war against crime was far from over. Part 25. The Unraveling. In the days that followed, Emily, Clara, and the task force worked tirelessly to piece together the evidence against Frank's syndicate. The operation was larger than they had initially anticipated, with connections to various illegal activities spanning the region. While reviewing the case files one afternoon, Clara found something that made her blood run cold, a series of transactions linked to a company owned by Mr. Thompson. "Emily, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing at the documents. "It appears Frank was using your husband's company as a front for laundering money." Emily's heart sank as she processed the information. "How is that possible? I thought I knew everything about him." "It gets worse," Clara continued. "It seems your husband may have been more involved than he let on. There are emails suggesting he was aware of Frank's dealings." Emily felt a wave of betrayal wash over her. How could Mr. Thompson have allowed this to happen? Part 26. Confronting the Truth. Determined to confront Mr. Thompson, Emily arranged to meet him at the precinct. She felt torn between her professional duty and the personal relationship she had built with him. When Mr. Thompson arrived, he looked exhausted and worn down. "Emily, what's going on?" he asked, worry etched on his face. "I found something," she said, her voice steady but tinged with disappointment. "Clara uncovered evidence linking your company to Frank's operation. It seems you may have been involved in more than just a personal betrayal." Mr. Thompson's face turned pale as he absorbed her words. "No, that's impossible. I had no idea Frank was using my company. I trusted him." "Trust is built on honesty, Mr. Thompson," Emily replied, her heart heavy. "We need the truth if we're going to move forward." He looked down, his hands trembling. I was desperate to keep my business afloat. Frank offered me a way out, but I didn't want to see it for what it was. I was blinded by my own needs." Part 27. The Choice. Emily realized that Mr. Thompson was a broken man, grappling with the consequences of his choices. "You need to come clean," she urged him. "If you cooperate, it may mitigate the legal consequences. Otherwise, you could face serious charges." He hesitated, anguish written on his face. "I can't believe I've put myself in this position, but you're right. I need to take responsibility for my actions." As he spoke, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a path to redemption for him, one that could bring closure to this tumultuous chapter of their lives. Part 28. The Turning Point. The next day, Mr. Thompson agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. He provided key evidence that implicated Frank and his associates, leading to multiple arrests beyond those initially apprehended. The task force worked tirelessly, building a comprehensive case against the syndicate. Emily was amazed at how quickly the pieces came together, and the air in the precinct buzzed with a sense of accomplishment. In the midst of the chaos, Emily found herself reflecting on her own life. The betrayal she had uncovered mirrored her past experiences, and she began to see parallels between her work and her relationships. Part 29. The Unexpected Offer. One evening, as Emily was leaving the precinct, Mr. Thompson approached her with a tentative look. "Can we talk?" "Of course," she replied, intrigued. "I want to thank you," he said sincerely, "for holding me accountable. It's made me realize how important it is to be honest with myself and others. I also want to offer you something." "What do you mean?" she asked, unsure of what he was getting at. "I want to fund a program that helps others avoid the mistakes I made. We can create workshops on ethics in business and relationships. I think it could really make a difference." Emily was taken aback. "That's an incredible idea, but are you sure you're ready for that?" "I have to be," he replied with conviction. "This is about redemption, and I want to use my experience to help others." Part 30. The Resolution. As the dust settled, Emily and Clara wrapped up the investigation, knowing they had made a significant impact on their community. They had brought down a dangerous syndicate and helped a man confront his demons. Mr. Thompson's program launched with great success, drawing in participants eager to learn from his mistakes. As Emily watched him speak at the first workshop, she felt a sense of pride. He was turning his life around, using his experiences to educate others. In the months that followed, Emily found solace in her work and her newfound friendships. She had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, learning the importance of integrity and honesty, both in her professional life and her personal relationships. Epilogue: New Beginnings. As Emily sat in her office one quiet evening, she received a text from Clara. "Ready for dinner? I found a new restaurant we have to try." Emily smiled, feeling grateful for the friendships that had blossomed through adversity. She knew that life would always have its challenges, but with each step forward, she was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons learned from her past and a renewed sense of purpose. And as she closed her laptop, the city lights twinkling outside her window, Emily felt a sense of hope. It was a new beginning, filled with possibilities and the promise of brighter days ahead. Part 31. The New Normal. In the following weeks, Emily immersed herself in her work while keeping a close connection with Clara and Mr. Thompson. Their bond, forged through chaos, had evolved into a strong friendship rooted in trust and shared experiences. They often met for dinner, sharing stories and laughter, each of them feeling more connected than ever. One evening, after a particularly long day at the precinct, Emily sat down with Clara at their favorite restaurant. The ambiance was warm, with soft jazz playing in the background and the comforting aroma of Italian cuisine filling the air. "I can't believe how far we've come since the Thompson case," Clara remarked, taking a sip of her wine. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Emily nodded, reflecting on the twists and turns their journey had taken. "It's strange how one event can change everything. I never thought I'd be so invested in Mr. Thompson's redemption story." Clara smirked. "You mean his new career as a motivational speaker? I still can't believe it." Emily laughed, but the laughter quickly faded as her mind wandered to the unresolved feelings surrounding her own life. "Speaking of changes, I've been thinking about my relationship status, or lack thereof, part 32, Facing the Past." Emily had been avoiding the topic of her personal life for a while. After the tumultuous events surrounding her marriage, she had buried herself in work, feeling unprepared to dive back into the dating scene. "Have you considered getting back out there?" Clara asked, sensing Emily's hesitation. "I don't know. It's hard to trust anyone again. The betrayal still stings." Emily felt a familiar ache in her chest, thinking about her past and the wall she had built around her heart. "You can't let fear dictate your life. Maybe you just need to take it slow," Clara suggested, her voice warm and encouraging. "Let yourself explore new possibilities." "I guess you're right," Emily conceded, feeling a flicker of hope. "But it's intimidating. I feel like I don't even know where to start." Part 33. A Chance Encounter. Just as the conversation was winding down, Emily spotted a familiar face across the room. It was Jake, an old colleague from her early days on the force. He had left the department for a while, but she had heard he was back in town. "Look who it is," Emily exclaimed, pointing him out to Clara. "I haven't seen him in ages." "Why don't you go say hi?" Clara urged, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, Emily stood up and made her way over to Jake. He looked up and smiled, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "Emily, it's great to see you. How have you been?" They exchanged pleasantries, and Emily felt a spark of excitement. "I've been busy with work, but it's good. How about you?" Jake leaned in, his tone conspiratorial. "I just got back from an undercover operation. I'm exhausted but feeling accomplished. It's nice to reconnect." "Definitely," Emily replied, feeling a warmth spreading through her. "Maybe we should catch up over coffee sometime?" "I'd love that," Jake said, grinning. "Let's set it up." Part 34. New Connections. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Jake met several times for coffee. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter and shared stories from their time in the force. Emily felt a sense of comfort with him that she hadn't experienced in a long time. As their friendship deepened, Clara watched from the sidelines, sensing the chemistry between them. One evening, after another successful meetup, she nudged Emily playfully. "You two have a real connection. Are you thinking of exploring that further?" Emily felt her cheeks flush. "I mean, It's been nice getting to know him again, but I'm still hesitant. I don't want to rush anything. Sometimes you just have to take the leap, Clara encouraged, her tone serious. You deserve happiness, Emily. Don't let your past dictate your future. Part 35, The Leap of Faith. Feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety, Emily finally decided to invite Jake to a weekend event she and Clara were hosting, a gathering for friends and colleagues to unwind and celebrate their recent successes. On the night of the gathering, the atmosphere was filled with laughter, good food, and music. Emily watched as Clara mingled with the guests, feeling grateful for her friend's support and encouragement. When Jake arrived, a warm smile lit up his face. "This place is great," he exclaimed, taking in the scene. Emily felt her heart flutter as he approached her. "Thanks for coming. I'm glad you could make it." They spent the evening chatting and laughing, the chemistry between them palpable. At one point, Clara caught Emily's eye and gave her a knowing grin, urging her to let her guard down. Part 36, The Moment of Truth. As the night progressed, Emily and Jake found themselves standing on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. "I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you, Emily," Jake said, leaning against the railing. "Me too," she replied, her heart racing. "It feels nice to have someone to talk to who understands what we've been through." Jake turned to her, his expression earnest. "I want to be honest. I've developed feelings for you, and I'd like to explore that if you're open to it." Emily's heart raced at his words. She felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "I have feelings for you too, Jake, but I'm scared. My past has made it hard for me to trust." "I understand completely," Jake said gently, reaching for her hand. "But I'm not asking you to jump in head first. Just take it one step at a time with me." Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. Maybe it was time to embrace new possibilities, to allow herself to feel again. "I'd like that," she said softly, squeezing his hand. Part 37, Embracing the Future. As the weeks turned into months, Emily and Jake took their time exploring their relationship. They shared experiences, supported each other through challenges, and found joy in the little things. Emily felt herself opening up, allowing vulnerability to creep back into her life. With Clara by her side, Emily began to thrive both personally and professionally. They continued working together on community initiatives, and Mr. Thompson's program grew, impacting the lives of many. Emily found herself inspired, knowing that every choice she made brought her closer to the person she wanted to be. One evening, as they were wrapping up a successful workshop, Mr. Thompson approached Emily and Clara. "I just wanted to thank you both for your hard work. This program is changing lives, and I couldn't have done it without you." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of pride. It's all about helping others learn from our experiences. Part 38, The Unexpected Twist. Just when things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected twist emerged. One afternoon, Clara received a call from an anonymous source, claiming to have vital information about Frank's syndicate that had been overlooked. Curiosity piqued, Clara shared the news with Emily. "We need to meet with this source. It could be crucial to our ongoing efforts to dismantle any remaining connections." With a sense of determination, they agreed to meet the informant in a discreet location. As they arrived at the designated spot, both women felt a mix of anticipation and caution. The informant, a nervous man in his late 30s, spoke in hushed tones. "I have information about a shipment that's coming in, drugs and weapons. It's linked to what Frank was doing, and I thought you should know." Part 39, The Final Countdown. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Emily and Clara immediately contacted the task force. They orchestrated a plan to intercept the shipment, knowing it could be the final piece needed to fully eradicate the criminal network that had plagued their community. The operation was set for the following night, and the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Emily, Clara, and the task force gathered to discuss their strategy, each officer aware of the risks involved. As they prepared, Emily felt a wave of adrenaline course through her. This was it, the moment they had been working towards for months. "Let's make this count," she urged her team, her resolve firm. Part 40, The Showdown. Under the cover of darkness, the task force positioned themselves around the location where the shipment was expected. Emily and Clara hid behind a stack of crates, their hearts racing with anticipation. Suddenly, headlights pierced the night as a truck rolled in, flanked by several armed men. Emily's breath quickened. "This is it," she whispered to Clara. "On my mark," Clara replied, her voice steady. As the men began unloading the truck, Clara signaled for the task force to move in. "Go, go, go!" The scene erupted into chaos as officers stormed the area, shouting commands and apprehending the armed men. Emily and Clara worked together seamlessly, supporting their colleagues as they secured the perimeter. In the midst of the action, Emily spotted Frank attempting to escape in the chaos. Without thinking, she sprinted after him, her instincts kicking in. "Frank, you're not getting away this time." Part 41, The Confrontation. Frank glanced back, panic in his eyes as he darted into an alley. Emily followed, adrenaline fueling her pursuit. She cornered him, her heart pounding as he turned to face her. "You're too late, Emily," he sneered, desperation lacing his voice. You think you've won?" Frank spat, backing away from her, a wild look in his eyes. "You've only scratched the surface. I have connections you can't even imagine. You'll never stop me." Emily squared her shoulders, feeling a surge of determination. "You've underestimated me before, Frank. You think you can intimidate me, but I've faced worse than you. This ends tonight." He lunged for the alley's exit, but Emily was quicker, using her training to intercept him. In a swift move, she tackled him to the ground, pinning him beneath her. "It's over. You're going to pay for everything you've done." As she held him down, she noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You think I'm scared of you?" He challenged, but there was a tremor in his voice. "No, but you should be scared of what's coming next," she replied, pulling out her handcuffs. "You're going away for a long time, and this time, there's no escape." Part 43, A Twist of Fate. Just as she was about to secure the cuffs around Frank's wrists, she heard a commotion coming from the street. Sirens blared and the sound of footsteps echoed, signaling that her team was closing in. But then, amidst the chaos, a gunshot rang out. Emily's heart dropped as she instinctively shielded Frank, knowing that in that moment her instincts had to protect herself as well as him. The world slowed around her as she assessed the scene, and she saw one of Frank's remaining men emerging from the shadows, weapon drawn. "Get down!" Emily shouted, rolling to the side as bullets whizzed past her. In the chaos, she reached for her radio, calling for backup. Part 44, The Show of Courage. In the midst of the gunfire, Clara burst into the alley, gun drawn and ready. "Emily, are you okay?" she yelled, her eyes scanning the scene. "I'm fine, but he's got a gun." Emily pointed to Frank's associate, who was now aiming for Clara. With lightning reflexes, Clara fired, hitting the shooter in the shoulder and knocking him off balance. He dropped his weapon, cursing as he fell to the ground. "You'll pay for this," he shouted as Clara approached him, determination in her eyes. Emily took the opportunity to cuff Frank, securing him against the wall. "I'm done playing games, Frank. You're going to face justice for everything." Part 45, The Moment of Truth. With the threat neutralized, Clara helped Emily to her feet. "Are you okay?" she asked. Concern etched on her face. "I'm fine, but we need to get Frank into custody now," Emily replied, her voice steady but her heart racing. As they led Frank out of the alley, surrounded by officers, he sneered at Emily. "You think this is over? You have no idea what I have planned next." Emily looked him straight in the eyes. "You're wrong. It's over for you. This time justice will prevail." As they placed Frank in the back of the squad car, he laughed maniacally. "You can't lock me away forever. I'll find a way out." Part 46, Closure and New Beginnings. With Frank finally in custody and his syndicate dismantled, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The hard work and perseverance had paid off, and justice had been served. As the night drew to a close, Emily and Clara returned to the precinct, feeling the exhilaration of victory. They embraced, knowing they had fought against the odds and come out stronger together. "Let's grab some food to celebrate," Clara suggested, her eyes twinkling. "We deserve it." As they stepped outside, a sense of hope filled the air. Emily looked up at the stars, realizing that the dark times were finally behind her. Part 47, a new chapter. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Emily and Jake's relationship blossomed, built on a foundation of friendship and trust. They supported each other through the challenges of their careers, growing closer with each passing day. One evening, while sitting together in a cozy cafe, Jake looked at Emily with a serious expression. "I've been thinking, I want to take this to the next level. I can see a future with you." Emily felt her heart flutter. "Are you sure? After everything?" "I've never been more sure about anything in my life," Jake assured her, taking her hand. "Let's face whatever comes next together." Part 48, a promise of tomorrow. Emily smiled, warmth flooding her. "I'd like that. I'm ready to embrace the future with you." As they left the cafe, the night air was crisp and clear, the city alive with energy. Emily felt a surge of optimism, knowing she had the support of her friends and the chance to build a new life. With the past behind her, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead, armed with the lessons she had learned and the strength of her connections. As she walked hand in hand with Jake, she realized that sometimes it's the unexpected twists in life that lead to the most beautiful outcomes. And in that moment, under the stars, she felt truly free.